Good morning, everyone. This is Reverend Hung Sher coming to you from Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia. And it's another beautiful Saturday morning here in Queensland, Friday afternoon, where many of you are, maybe Friday evening if you're in Europe. We're about to look into the Lotus Sutra, the Dharma Flower Sutra's chapter on Guanyin Bodhisattva, called the Universal Gateway, Universal Doorway chapter. How are you all doing this morning? We are going to have a Vietnamese translation. Look for your chat box. There's a link to the Vietnamese translation. We have a translation into Mandarin due to the kindness and generosity of our volunteers. So 如果大家想听中文的话呢，你就可以按你的 translation 钮在下边右手边可以听中文。Okay. Today, Elaine Tran is going to be helping us request Dharma. So let's see here. I've got my bell. And we've got our text. There it is. So let me ring the bell 3 times. I'm going to do 3 half bows. Invite you to join me if you care to. And after the 3 bows, then I'll ask Elaine to Qingfa. Here we go. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. All right, I'm going to put my palms together. Elaine, if you would like to request Dharma.
Yes, I'm a master.
Okay, please begin.
Okay. 恭请大德圣听，为此法会，济一切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐。殊真无生 Will the Sangha with great virtue out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi sanmiao sanputoshe.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi sanmiao sanputoshe.
无上甚深微妙法，来千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered throughout billions of eons. But now we see it, hear it, and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. All right. Thank you, Elaine. Appreciate your help this morning doing the Dharma request. That really, in fact, does help me a lot to get centered, to find my breath, and to drop my chi down to where it belongs. So that when we open this text, which we're going to do right now, I'm better able to kind of polish my lens so that any light from the sutra through my lens shines out and connects with folks' needs around the world. That's the whole process of requesting Dharma. Today is Saturday, 17th of April here in Australia. It is Friday, the 16th, where many of you are. Here's our text, known as the Miao Fa Lian Hua Jing Guan Shi Yin Pu Sa Pu Men Pin, Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wondrous Dharma, the universal door, the bodhisattva who listens to the sounds of all the world. It's a gateway. I'm tending, I keep changing my thoughts on the title. And yesterday, I found myself describing this text to people as the universal doorway, Guanyin Bodhisattva's universal doorway. And what do you think? Maybe, maybe not. Universal gateway, universal gate, universal doorway, portal, the portal. Okay. We're going to, we did these 2 paragraphs last week. We're going to start on the second paragraph again, right here on your screen. We did it before, but it works with, it introduces the 2 passages that we're going to do today. Okay, here we go. I'm going to put my palms together. 佛告无尽意菩萨，善男子，若有无量百千万亿众生受诸苦恼，闻是观世音菩萨，一心成名，观世音菩萨，其实观其应生，皆得解脱了。The Buddha answered, infinite resolve, good man, if all the countless hundreds of thousands of millions of living beings, tormented by misery and pain, hear of Guanyin Bodhisattva, and with all their hearts invoke her name, Guanyin Bodhisattva will immediately respond to their prayers and set them free. So what's in this? This is the essence of the sutra, the essence of the chapter. This is Guanyin's story right here, isn't it? Right? So Guanyin asked the Buddha, where did Guanyin's name come from? The one who hears the sounds, who hears the cries, the one who responds to the pleas, the one who receives the prayers of living beings. Where'd that name come from? And the Buddha is now talking. Here we get the Buddha's voice. The Buddha says, good man could be good woman, but the requester is a man, so it requires shannan, so it could be shanniren. If living beings tormented hear Guanyin Bodhisattva and invoke her name, Guanyin responds and sets them free. All the verbs there. Okay. The Buddha says, if you're in trouble, if you're hurting, and you call her name, Guanyin's vows mean she will hear you and respond. and set you free. Okay, that's the promise. Okay, now there are details. Notice I skipped some of the words here. Why? It says countless hundreds of thousands of millions of living beings. All those living beings. Doesn't matter how many need help. Guanyin's vows, her capacity, her ears, her eyes, her hands are enough to respond to all of them. That's one detail that I want to point out. The numbers don't matter. Okay. Number two, with all their hearts, invoke her name. That's how you do it. In other words, you have to need it. You have to be sincere. If you're checking out Guanyin, if you're shopping for Guanyin's help, if you're curious, if you're experimenting with Guanyin, you didn't really mean it. What will Guanyin Bodhisattva do then? Not recommended. You might think, oh, it didn't work. Guess it doesn't work, right? And then you cut yourself off from when you need it. Oh my God. So with all their hearts, notice that translation, yi xin cheng ming. Yi xin, with a single mind. There it is. Yi xin cheng ming, with all their hearts, invoke her name. Guanyin will immediately respond to their prayers. I also didn't say the immediately part, right? Respond to their prayers and set them free. Okay, let's take a look. Here's Guanyin. Here's some notes. Okay, see the notes page here? Ruo, yo, the number, how many? Zhongsheng, what? Shou zhu ku nao. Look at that. If living beings experience all kinds of troubles, okay, who dat? Who are we talking about? Is that you? Have you experienced all kinds of troubles? One response would be, you want the latest troubles? What kind of troubles do you want me to tell you about? Yeah, I got some troubles. All kinds of troubles. Kunao in Chinese is a really good elastic word, right? It involves ku is bitter. It's also the word for suffering. With nao has the heart radical on the left side of that character. And it's interesting because the nao also, it's the same word for brain, naojin, right? And so a lot of the suffering, a lot of the kunao that come to us they don't impact my body. It's not that I'm like starving or necessarily that I sprain my ankle or have a sore neck or sore back. Often the kunao that comes to us is mental anguish, right? I can't stand to be locked up in this room one more minute. And we've just heard we have to lock down again. You know, the governor of Michigan, the state of Michigan, anybody from America listening in? The state of Michigan has the highest rate of COVID infections of any state. 99% of hospitals in major cities in Michigan are full now, as of today, right? This fourth wave is just hit Michigan like crazy. And the thing that works right away is to lock down, is to stop circulating the virus. But guess what Michigan is? Michigan is the place where when the governor a year ago, probably a year ago, ordered a lockdown, armed men showed up at the Capitol saying, you can't take our freedom from us. And with guns, automatic weapons, showed up and said, You can't tell us to keep ourselves safe. We demand freedom. We have to go out and get sick. Crazy. And so now here's the governor a year into it saying, we're going to have to lock down again. Oh boy. So that's cool now, right? That's real cool now. People who are determined to keep themselves sick, they have no wisdom. And when they're told to be good and have a thought for everyone and have a civic mind and care about others and be unselfish and just endure a little bit of discomfort because it's for everyone's best interests. Oh no, no, we're not going to do that. So that's hard to be a civic leader when you have citizens who are trained to be selfish, right? Rewarded for freedom. We demand freedom. So that is kunao. When living beings show kunao, it's invisible often. You can't see it, but oh, it is cool. When you don't like anybody different than you, when everyone who is different than you see as a threat because you've been told that story, right? A lot of it is stories, right? It's stories. And my goodness, we believe those stories, even when the stories are, have negative intent. When those stories have evil intent, they're not of goodwill, right? They're called bad faith actors. Tell you stories, people believe them, even when it's to their own harm. Oh my goodness, that is cool now. Okay, if this sentence started out with if those beings shoju kunao and what yi xin cheng ming, single-mindedly. How did our text put it? The text said right here, with all their hearts. That's a good English idiom. Single-mindedly, with all their hearts. Call her name. Yi xin cheng ming. You have to need it. 即时观世音菩萨，即时观其音声. Right then, on the spot, she will hear your cries and set you free. We have a question from Alice. Let's see here. Yeah, they're different. They're right. I've been told that now and now are different characters. They are. But I said the same sound, right? They were assigned different characters, but Nao Jin and Fan Nao are both third tones, right? So I said that's interesting coincidence. You're right, Chanyu, they're different characters. But that's how I remember my Hanzi, my Chinese characters. You kind of pin it to a picture. And if I want to say 你的脑筋,我的脑筋, my mind, I think, 我的烦恼. This is the same sound. Okay. So you can get into the eternal question among philologists and linguists is, did language begin as sounds or did it begin as images, as characters? And pretty much everybody agrees that spoken language preceded written language came afterwards. But the word now, trouble, worries, grief, sorrows, afflictions, and now, brain, same sound, different characters. We have another question from Alice, and Alice wants to know, what's the difference when you're reciting Guanyin's name on a daily basis and when you exhort Guanyin when you're in trouble, like the sutra mentions? Okay, so I would say to you, what's the difference between $10 in your pocketbook, $10 on your credit card, and $10 in the bank? If you continue, the answer is nothing. You can still use it. It's still money compared to not reciting. If you have no money in your pocket and you need to, pay a bridge toll, what do you do? Do you go through the gate anyway and hope the camera missed you, or know that you're going to get an email from the Bridge Toll Authority, the Highway Department, Caltrans, right? So money, if you, I'm mixing my metaphors wildly. Let's get back to the question. Suppose you have beads. I've got a set of beads right here. Here are my beads. You can hear them. And daily, as I walk from the parking lot to my office, as I have my head on the pillow and not yet asleep, as I am waiting in line at the bank, what do? I go, 观世音菩萨，南无观世音菩萨，南无观世音菩萨，南无观世音菩萨，南无观世音菩萨，南无观世音菩萨. Right? Get the idea? You recite regularly. Maybe you don't have beads. Maybe you got a fancy electronic calculator, counter, nifty high-tech counter. Cool. Maybe you don't need no stinking counter. Maybe like Master Shenhua, like Shifu, you recite and you're never wrong of the number. You're never confused about the number. You always know where you are. Shifu said he could do that. Didn't use his fingers, didn't use his beads. He always knew where he was when he was reciting. And you don't recite carelessly, right? It's good to know. Today I recited, 10,080 times, or 1,080 times. Today I recited 108 times. Today I recited 21 times. If you do it all the time, sure enough, you have access to Guanyin. And the way I think about it, Alice, it's not so much we think about, we're reciting the name of Guanyin, and we think about an external Guanyin who comes from afar, from the sky, or where does Guanyin come from, to cross the distance from where she is to where we need her to be. That's the natural way to think about it. I think about Guanyin inside. What's the Puman? Where is that universal doorway? And my best answer is that doorway is in our heart. It's in our mind. It's in a place where Guanyin already is, if we have that connection to her. So if, let's say, we're on the always reciting side. So I habitually, personally, I have to say, I don't recite Guanyin's name as often. I recite the mantra, the Dabe Jo. Same thing. It's also a Dabe Faman, a great compassion gateway. So, okay, so I'm reciting Namo Haladana Dola Ye. Other people could be reciting Namo Guanshiyim Bodhisattva. By doing that, you open the gateway in your heart to Guanyin. I think of it that way. Now, is it that way? That's not necessarily. That's the way I think of it. You're opening your line. You're making the cell phone call. You're sending the text to Guanyin in your heart when you recite. So the response is already there. The problem is we often are so covered, we can't hear the response. Guanyin is in our heart saying, hello, hi, just will you listen? I'm here. What do you need? And we're like, where's Guanyin? Where's Guanyin? Where's Guanyin? We cover up, we mess it up. We think too much. So question, many recitations better or one recitation? Is the response the same? My experience tells me, my personal experience, that it's the same. What matters is that you send the text, that you actually make the request. Once you do, once you say, Namo Guanyin Pusa, right? Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. The connection is there. So that's my answer. It's the same. Now, your question, I think, was prompted by my statement not to try, not to experiment. It's kind of like we trick Guanyin into responding. That's to look down on Guanyin. My experience shows me that Guanyin is way bigger than we know. Guanyin Bodhisattva was a Buddha, right? And she took all that wisdom power, all that light, all that nature, you could say, and focused it down to a function in a female body, Guanyin Bodhisattva. I'm going to respond to living beings who need me. The size of the Buddha's ability to respond, you could just say it this way: the human mind's ability, when it's uncovered and functioning, to respond is vast, right? Understand that, Guanyin Bodhisattva is a technique, is a method. Guanyin is an awakened human mind. The cry regarder, the sound hearer, the voice hearer, right? The one who responds. Guanyin is big, really big. It's a human mind uncovered and trained and given this charge, this mission. What's the mission? The vows. Guanyin's vows. The Buddha who became Guanyin made vows and said, it's Zheng Fa Ming Rulai, right? The light of right Dharma, said, I'm going to stick around. I'm not going to go away. I want to continue to help living beings. And so made that vow and came back in this incredible form. The form changes too, mind you. There are many, we'll find out all the different forms of Guanyin. Okay. Yeah. So it's a really good question. Does Guanyin come to people who never recite except they heard grandmas tell them to do it, and so at the last minute they do it? The question would be, did they do it? Did they ask? If they ask, they get a response. So, some might think, so why bother? Why put all that work in? Why keep reciting? If I get the same response, if I just by doing it once, why bother? Well, what if you forget? That's the deal. The fear would be that we don't even do it once, man. That's really true, right? Too late, right? Your car is heading for the divider strip. You've been clipped in the back by somebody running from the police, which is a real possibility in America. You were driving safely on the freeway. Somebody clips you, and suddenly you're spinning towards the center divider at high speed, right? And there are cars on all sides of you. Ooh, that's not too far away. We can imagine that. We've been on that freeway. What then, right? Well, Namo Guanyin Pusa, Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. That's when the constant reciting pays off. Okay, so Alice's question was, right, what's the difference when you're reciting a lot all the time or once? You get the same response. If you sincerely, if you yi xin cheng mi, that's if you with all your heart invoke Guanyin, it happens inside us. We open that line. Guanyin gets the message. It's not that she was busy on another call. She was in a Zoom meeting. No, Guanyin gets it because it comes from our heart, which is Guanyin's heart. So once does the same too, but don't wait because you might forget. You might not remember. So habits matter. Okay, that's a word I didn't use yet in answering Alice's question. Habitual reciting means it's there and available to us. Okay, if one has been reciting Guanyin's name is there a greater benefit by changing to learn and recite Great Compassion Mantra? Is a question from Jerry. No. Greater benefit? No, I don't think so. Because why? What you want in the time of, so I start back. They're both methods of accessing Guanyin, but they function differently. Okay, so in order to, so the question is reciting the name the same or different from reciting the mantra in terms of benefits? Definitely different. The mantra has all kinds of other functions. We might not, oh, actually, I don't know if Kane is on. Kane asked about the Dharani Sutra last week or the week before, and I didn't remember to answer. The Dharani Sutra is another text that teaches Guanyin Bodhisattva Dharmas. Shifu, Master Shenhua, explained the Dharani Sutra, and it's a wonderful, amazing sutra that focuses a lot on the mantra. So that's where I'll refer to it. The Dabe Shin Tolo Ni Jing, the Dharani of Great Compassion Sutra. I'll refer to it. We're not going to explain it, but it talks about the mantra. It has, let's say, for example, healing. The Dharani Sutra talks about healing a lot with the mantra. Not so much when you recite the name is there healing. However, I live in what's called the bush in Australia. I live in the forest. I live in the woods surrounded by trees. And this place is alive with living beings who have no feet. They crawl on their bellies. Living beings who have 2 feet, living beings who have 4 feet. And I'm not going to stop there. Living beings who have 6 feet, who have 8 feet. We have a lot of arachnids, right? Spiders and all kinds of critters like that with many feet. And because their bodies are small and fragile and my body is big, I find myself in a position to be hurting living beings, crushing them, stepping on them, squashing them without knowing it. A spider crawls into my teacup and I turn the faucet on to wash it out before I look. And here I've drowned a spider, right? It happens. At night, they crawl around, without knowing it. I've had spiders in my saucepan on the stove, big ones. Luckily, I've learned to look. You learn to look. When that happens, when inadvertently I harm a living being, I have found that at that point, if I say, Namo Guanyin Pusa, Namo Guanyin Pusa, Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva, please save this poor little living being whose body I've harmed, right? Many times I have seen those beings who are, for all the world, they look drowned, they look dead, right? They wake up and walk away. I've seen this happen a lot, and it gives me something positive to do. I will say, Guanyin Bodhisattva, please help this sad little living being. And she does. I've seen it happen a lot, right? So I'm still responding to Jerry's question. There is healing in the name. And if you're in a hurry and you don't have time to Namo Hola Dano Dola recite the mantra, the name works well. The mantra, however, functions in many, many different ways. So to say they're the same, not exactly. Sue says, doesn't matter where, how far we are, she can hear our heart indeed, because our hearts are connected, heart to heart. Okay, chant all the time. When you begin to notice those acts of kindness and every day it reflects your presence, feel grateful. Okay, Bernie and Xingfei down in Sydney brought out the really, really important point, which is the first question, Alice's question was, when you need it, Guanyin saves you. If you recite once at the time you need help, the help comes, right? if you recite all the time, what happens is you begin to notice compassion on all sides, little acts of kindness in everyday life that reflect our deeper connection. You become more compassionate and you appreciate Guanyin. You feel grateful. Exactly. Bernie, thank you for that. Absolutely. Okay, yeah. So Kane wanted to know about the Dharani Sutra. Dharani Sutra, it belongs to a genre of Buddhist literature known as secret school, I guess, esoteric school text. The Dharani Sutra contains other elements, medicine, actual formulas. Chop up this and combine it with this, and this helps. But Master Hua Shifu gave us the Dharani Sutra, and then discovered that once he pointed people to it, there was, I guess you could say, some unwholesome attention. People wanted power from the sutra, and he heard stories of people taking his lectures and selling them online for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So he said, we're not going to circulate that book for now. People aren't quite ready for it. But I still refer to the Dharani Sutra, and there's lots of goodness that will come into our lecture series here. Okay, but yeah, if you have a copy, if you have access to it, certainly there's tremendous value, goodness in that text. All right. So is it encouraged to keep count? Seems impossible if you're using Guanyin's name overlaid with breath during meditation. Yes, correct. That's impossible to count. Shifu's teaching was don't recite luan, 不要乱来, right? You don't want to recite carelessly. So if you are someone who meditates to Guanyin's name, definitely you don't want to, here I am telling you what you do and do not want to do. It's okay to simply recite without counting. By saying, uh-oh, I better know how many, you might mess up your samadhi, right? So I don't want to give you something else to worry about. The less we worry about during meditation, the better. Okay. What Master Hua meant was, if you have a practice, some people have a practice, often it's with Amitabha, right? They will say, I'm going to recite 10,000 Amitabhas today. If that's your daily practice, then do it. Be clear. Don't give yourself the practice and then carelessly recite and quit, then pick it up later after your soap is over, or your soapers, after Netflix, you pick it up again. That's what he was talking about. People who use the name as a focus device while meditating, don't worry. To give yourself another thing to think about will often upset the mindfulness that you're working on. So yeah, if you have beads, it's nice. I used to keep, when I was a grad student on the Berkeley campus, I had a 108 bead string, and I had a little tiny safety pin. And to get from the bus stop to Durant Hall, the bus stopped on the west side of campus. I had to walk past the life science building to get to Durant Hall. It took me about 12 mantras. So I would recite, and when I got to that spot, I would advance my safety pin along my bead string. Then at lunch, while I was going over to the restaurant to get my bowl of su cai tang mian at Long Life Restaurant, it would take me another 20 mantras. And I would advance my safety pin, right? So I had a number of mantras I wanted to recite. That wasn't names, it was mantras. And often I would get back home and I would still have like 25 mantras to go or something because I've been counting all day. But in that case, I wanted to know precisely. So that's another story, right? If you're doing a precise vow, right? So understand, Michael, it's all expedience, and we don't want to, you know, uh, different natures of people approach these practices in different ways. And some people like, gotta do it, gotta be that way, or else, nah, that's not the way Sherwood taught it. The whole idea is to keep our connection to Guanyin open. Her name has the power, the mantras have power, and we empower them. We charge them up by bringing them into our mind. Okay, so that's the basics. It doesn't do to get like super legalistic about it. So if you're reciting Guanyin's name while meditating, it's great. What do we got? We've got, I promised that we were going to introduce music as well. Guanyin accessed through music. My heart cries out to Guanyin. My heart cries out to Guanyin. My heart cries out to Guanyin. Namo, Namo, Guanyin. Namo, Namo, Guanyin. Namo, Namo, Guanyin. Guanyin, Guanyin, hear my call. Guanyin, Guanyin, hear my call. Guanyin, Guanyin, hear my call. Guanyin, Guanyin, calm my mind. Guanyin, Guanyin, calm my mind. Guanyin, Guanyin, calm my mind. Guanyin, Guanyin, still my heart. Guanyin, Guanyin, still my heart. Guanyin, Guanyin, still my heart. Namo, Namo, Guanyin. Namo, Namo, Guanyin. Namo, Namo, Guanyin. Thanks to Joanne Shenandoah for loaning us that melody from her Creator's Song. You can find that on Joanne Shenandoah's album called Olunda. So there we are. I have a story to tell. I was in a white panel van heading towards Golden, British Columbia. And I was in the passenger seat. It was winter. It was February in Alberta. Oh man. I was setting out from Calgary with another monk, and we were on the Queens Highway heading west in a white panel van in the winter. And yeah, talk about a cliffhanger. Boy, oh boy, not recommended. Don't keep your audience waiting that long. You might lose them. So what happened? The monk who was driving was not used to cold weather driving, probably never driven on snow and ice before. And he had an attitude that was dismissive of such paltry worldly concerns as things like icy highways in Canada in the winter, in a panel van that has a very high center of gravity, right? Not the most stable of vehicles. And there's a phenomenon in Canada that you need to know about called le glace bleu, right? Black ice. In French, it's blue, but it's black, le glace bleu. And what you do is, if you're on black ice, the problem is it looks like the road surface because it's kind of transparent, but it's actually a cake of ice, and it's as slippery as a skating rink. And if you hit black ice while you're driving, you don't apply the brakes. If you have to apply the brakes, you tap gently and you get ready for the wheel to spin, and you steer into the direction of the spin. So if your rear end breaks away and you see yourself going left, you turn the wheel to the left to correct. It's really a skill. You have to learn how to do it. It's not immediately clear how to deal with black ice, right? So here we are in this top heavy van, and I know the van had old tires to boot. And in the other thing that you do if you drive the roads in Alberta is you get studded snow tires. Every vehicle needs them. Well, we didn't have studded snow tires. So guess what? I had my copy of my sutra recitation book. I had one of those volumes that had multiple sutras in it, and I was scared stiff because I knew this monk was unconcerned. How did I know? He had a half-gallon plastic jug of chocolate milk that he was swigging from, and one arm draped over the steering wheel, and that was a situation where you needed to be super careful because it's tricky driving those roads. Well, he accelerated around a curve, and the wind caught the van and blew us slightly off track. Well, he hit the brakes and we spun. We spun 1, 2, 3 times in a circle. And the highways, this is the Queens Highway. This is the major thoroughfare from New Brunswick to Vancouver, right? And what happened? We climbed the embankment where the snow plows had piled up the snow 8 feet tall, way over your head. The snowplows just blow this tunnel. We spun, climbed the embankment. The van flipped on its side. It went bam, whomp, on its side on the freeway. And I was on the high side, dangling from my seatbelt. I had fastened my seatbelt moments before because as we left Alberta and entered the province of British Columbia, there was a sign that said, "Bouclez vos ceintures," fasten your seatbelts. I had fastened my seatbelt. He spun the van over. I was hanging in midair, suspended by my seatbelt. This is a big van. It's a panel van, right? There's lots of room in that seat. So I was 2-3 feet in the air. And cleverly, I thought, hey, this is not good. I better get out of this van because what if it's leaking gasoline? What if somebody comes around the curve? So I unbuckled my seatbelt and landed wham on the steering wheel and broke a rib. Oh. I need to take you back to the important moment, which was what? As I saw the monk hit the brake, I recited, Namo Guanyin Pusa, Namo Guanyin Pusa, Namo Guanyin Pusa. And although I'm a reciter of the Great Compassion Mantra, when the moment came that I felt the van leave the road and climb the embankment, climb the snow wall of the tunnel, and then flip over, I was reciting Guanyin's name. Boy, oh boy, you can bet I was. I was reciting Guanyin's name. It came out of my mind very spontaneously. And I felt everything slow down. It was as if we had shifted to slow motion. Everybody's got a slow-mo function on your phone. You know how it works, right? Things slow down. And I remember this exquisite frame by frame experience of the van leaving the road, climbing the embankment where the snowplows had pushed up the snow, turning on its side, spinning around, bam, and down. And do you know what brought me back to regular time? Was the chocolate milk dripping off the windshield onto my face as I lay broken over the steering wheel with my ribs cracked. Yeah, the chocolate milk coated the windshield. And the monk who had driven climbed out the back. His door was crushed against the highway, against the ice. He climbed through the back of the van and out the back door. Well, I climbed up and opened the top door. We were on our side. I managed to push the door open. My rib cage was in great pain. And I climbed out of the car and down to the road. And first thing we saw was a Royal Canadian Mounted Police, a Mountie, a real Mountie, who was clapping his arms on our shoulders, saying, "Boy, it's cold. You all right? Yeah. Whew. Oh, it's cold. It's really cold today. Oh, how are you? You okay? How many of you were in the car?" So we both escaped with nothing but a lot of spilled chocolate milk. And I noticed something on the road bed, and I walked over, and there was my sutra book open to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's practices and vows for some reason. It wasn't, it would be better for the story if it was open to the Pumanpian, right? But it wasn't. It was Samantabhadra. And it had, there was ice crystals on the pages. I still have that book with the pages that show that they, like when you spill water on it, where the melted snow and ice wrinkled the pages. I still have that text, and every time I see it, I'm carried back to the road's bed, the roadway. And clearly, that ability to recite Guanyin's name kept me, number one, from freaking out, kept me from panicking. We were okay, even though a car came around the bend, saw us, hit the brakes, and spun as well. A second car spun when they saw our collision, our accident, and they were saved. And the Mountie was running back, get those flares out of the bed. So quite a scene, but I had Guanyin's name to recite, and I'm sure that it was Guanyin's compassion that kind of lent a hand so that our van arrived to the other shore, took us across. Yeah. Comment, Sue says, yeah, downshifting also better to slow you down than hitting the brakes. Let's see here. Can dogs make it to the Pure Land from their doggy bodies if they've heard Amitofo recitation for most of their lives and resonate with the name? How would you know? I don't know the answer to that. And I have to have different eyes working than the ones I have right now to tell you clearly yes, no. The principle is, I have birds who visit my deck every day to whom I recite the name Amitabha all the time. I'm reciting Omitofo kind of with every bit of bird food that I pass out to these critters, these feathered friends, telling them to go to the Pure Land because they can sing for Amitabha there. I tell them to be good so that they can get to the Pure Land. So I'm definitely hoping that because they hear me say Omitofo, that it will go into their hearts and create an affinity with the Buddha Amitabha. So I hope so. For me to say yes or no, I can't say that. So certainly it doesn't hurt at all to recite Amitabha for your little puppy. It's a good sound, and that is a very powerful seed of goodness. So I would not hesitate. You can be the first one to tell us whether that really works, right? And you can also dedicate merit to animals, both alive and alive only in your memory. Okay, time's up, by golly. We did one paragraph of the text, but I think going into it bit by bit is helpful for all of us. Even if you can recite it from memory, which I strongly recommend, going into the words and seeing them again as if for the first time, that's a good thing. That's a good thing to do. Okay, can we transfer merit now to folks who are suffering from coronavirus, COVID-19? The pandemic is not over, and we need to be mindful, right, of folks who are suffering. If you got your shot, well done. Got your vaccinations, way to go. If it's still coming here in Australia, not so many folks have, right? Still to be rolled out, but we can recite for those both newly infected, already recovered, and never infected. Create an affinity with Medicine Buddha for those who need help. Here we go. Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tathagata Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Asajin Asajin Asaja Samgate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Asajya Guru Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tathagata Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Asajin Asajin Asaja Samgate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Asajya Guru Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tathagata Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Asajin Asajin Asaja Samgate Swaha Om. Thanks everybody for joining. See you all next week. Recite that name, Namo Guanyin Pusa. Bye-bye.